was born in Sydney in 1973, just over 50 years ago now. So I don't remember being born though, but I do know the date. So I've lived in Sydney most of my life. I've lived in London for about a year in 2001, and used to travel quite often around the world for my photography, and used to go to Los Angeles almost yearly. I had a bit of a different childhood to most kids. So when I was 4.5, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Um, so yeah, that's shaped pretty much my whole life. It's one of the things that shaped my whole life, becoming a diabetic. And I don't really remember what life was like before I became a diabetic. So yeah, so that's a daily struggle. And it only gets harder as you get older. But I used to sometimes get my mum to drive me out to the training fields at Parramatta, so I could like get Peter Sterling's autograph and meet Eric Groth and Mick Cronin and Ray Price, and so I'd stand there and wait for them to finish football training, and then when they finished, I'd ask them to come over and I'd get my card signed or a poster signed, and I've still got a big poster that Peter Sterling signed for me in like 1986. I've collected skateboards for most of my life, and I love them. I love the art of a skateboard from the 80s because it takes me back to that time where I might not have been able to afford, or my parents might not have been able to afford, a particular Tony Hawk skateboard. And now as I've gotten older, I've, saved up a little bit of money, I can now go and buy that Tony Hawk skateboard from 1986 that I couldn't get when I was a kid. And I put it on my wall, and, I'd look at them every day, and I'm like, yeah, I finally got those Tony Hawk skateboards I wanted when I was a kid. Took me 30 odd years, but I got there. So persevere, I say, persevere, don't give up. I'd have about roughly 100 skateboards. There's a fine line between hoarding and collecting, I've learnt. As a teenager, I got obsessed in Roy Orbison. Loved Roy. He was my idol. I was a school kid. I had a backpack, and in Texter, I wrote Roy Orbison on my backpack, where everybody else was writing Kiss or INXS and U2 and everything else. And I remember in '85 when I was 11 or 12, I got one of those best of cassettes, and it was it was like 30 songs of '85, and I just constantly played that. So I realized at a pretty young age, when I was a kid, that I wanted to become a photographer, and I didn't have a camera, and I started to meet celebrities in the '80s, and I was an autograph collector. I loved collecting autographs, and I went to the football games, and after the matches or after training with all the other kids, especially at football games, because in the '80s you could run on the field. You could go to Redfern Oval, and when the Bunnies finished, all the kids would just pile over the fence. We'd all run, and we'd go, oh, there's Mario Fennick, or there's Craig Coleman, and we'd just have a little tiny ticket. We'd try to get 10 autographs on this little ticket. You'd come home, and there'd be just scribbles, but you're like, wow, I met, all these great footy players. So in 1996, when I was 23, I actually went to TAFE and did a photography course. But I realised, and I've learnt this in life, if you can teach yourself something, for me anyway, it's far better because you've taught yourself that, you learn it better. So I taught myself photography pretty quick, and I got to understand light and of course focusing and aperture and depth and what sort of film to use and all that sort of stuff. So in 1989, I found out about a hotel in Sydney called the Siebel Townhouse, and that's where most of the visiting celebrities would stay when they were in Sydney. And I started meeting them. I remember being at the ARIA Awards in 1990, and Ollie Olsland came out. He was with Michael Hutchins with the Max Q project, and I got a photo with Ollie. I got some Max Q records signed, and I got a photo with him. And I said to him, "Oh, I'd love to go inside the ARIAs and take some photos of all the famous rock stars." And he's like, "Oh, well, come in with me." And I'm like, really? I just had a t-shirt on. Like, I'm literally t-shirt, shorts, sneakers. I'm a kid. So he takes me into the ARIAs as his guest. There was a seat next to him. I get the seat next to him. He's like, well, just go around, just take photos of people. And then there I am just taking photos of, I think Mick Fleetwood was there, and Bob Geldof was there that night, and Billy Thorpe, and there was, all the Australian musicians were there, and there I am just going, oh, hi, how are you, in my in my t-shirt and shorts. I'm just going to quickly test my sugar.
Yeah, you're right. No, good idea. That's fine.
I'll just test it because I don't want it dropping, and then I'm like, oh,
No,
shit,
you're right.
I need to go.
Let me know if you need any food.
All right, we're still good. We're
You're
still
okay?
Yeah. I did become a professional photographer as the years went on. I worked for agencies all around the world and did photo shoots, and I had to do weddings sometimes to pay the bills, in the early days. So I've photographed everything. Even I used to do real estate photography as well. Because my name's Richard and I was photographed with famous people, I thought this would be cool to have something called Richard and Famous one day. So I was quite conscious that every time I met a celebrity, I would try to also get a photo with them. It didn't always happen. Not all of them would pose for a photo, but I was about 90% success rate on getting a photo with somebody. And I'm talking about big names, you name it, like the Dalai Lama, John Bon Jovi, Kiss, U2, Audrey Hepburn, INXS, Gregory Peck, Don Bradman, Poison, Lady Gaga, Bon Jovi, Ben Stiller, Debbie Gibson, Kate Ceberano, Taylor Swift, Jimmy Barnes, Robert Redford, Cyndi Lauper, Ian Moss, Boris Becker, Katy Perry, Icehouse, Helena Christensen, Rowan Atkinson, Reese Witherspoon, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Jerry Lewis, Robert Downey Jr. was Paris Hilton, Sammy Davis Jr., Tom Hanks, Frank Sinatra, Oprah, Liza Minnelli, Tyra Banks, Johnny Diesel and the Injectors. I don't. There's so many. And after a number of years, I realised I had enough photos. I'd had enough, you might call them subjects even, celebrities in my collection, to have a book and also to have an exhibition, because I knew I was doing something quite unique. I contacted a gallery and I said, I've got this exhibition, I've got an idea for it. It's called Richard and Famous, and it's my life over 20 odd years with celebrities. Came in, we had a chat, they're like, we're doing it. So in 2008, Richard and Famous, the exhibition, opened in Paddington in Sydney, and it broke attendance records. It's the only exhibition like it in the world still today. I saw Star Wars in 1977 when I was 4, so I was like, wow, Harrison Ford. And I know his reputation back, 20 odd years ago, he wasn't overly friendly to the public. He was a bit guarded, a bit quiet. And I knew he didn't like doing autographs and photos just from other people. But I went up to him and had a little chat at the lifts before he got in, and he had a big bodyguard with him actually. And just before he got in the lift, I said, oh, do you mind if I get a photo? I'm just here from Australia, I'm on a holiday. And he just sort of stood there, and I was with my partner, and he said, take the photo. Just like, literally, that's it, take the photo. And she went, snapped it, then the lift door opened, and he just went in, and that was it. So even 20 minutes later, Macy Gray comes in. So I get up, I get a photo with Macy Gray. As soon as I sit back down, I see this big guy in a suit walk past, and he's pushing Larry Flint, the Hustler publication person that did the magazine. He got shot. He's got this beautiful gold wheelchair that I'd only heard about. So I go up to Larry Flint. Hi, Larry. I'm from Australia. My name's Richard. Oh, nice to meet you. Had a little chat. Do you mind if I get a photo? Yeah, sure. So I get Larry Flint. I sit back down. A few minutes later, Kate Hudson walks past. Oh my God. So I get up. Hi, Kate. How are you? Do the whole thing. I'm from Australia. I'm staying in a hotel. Sure, get a photo. Yeah, I'm just here for lunch. Oh God, it was almost like a tornado coming through the hotel lobby. Like 20 security guards just walked through the lobby, and there was 2 people in the middle of them. And I was with my partner, we couldn't see who they were protecting. And we're kind of looking. And then it turned out to be David Beckham and Victoria Beckham. Not long after that, my partner went into the bathroom, and Victoria Beckham just goes in there by herself, because all the bodyguards were male. So she went into the toilet by herself, and they're washing hands. And she said, oh, my partner's a big fan of yours and David's. Any chance he could get a photo with you guys? And then it was like the Red Sea just opened. Security guards opened. We got invited into this circle of security, and we got to chat. I got a group photo with them in the middle. Got photos with David by himself, talking about Australia, asking questions about the Spice Girls, talking to David about soccer. It was surreal. So I wanted to document my life in photos with celebrities from the age of 15 up until the age of 40. It's 25 consecutive years with celebrities. And that became a project. So when I first started it, there was a great innocence. Um, some celebrities, I remember James Hetfield from Metallica came out of the hotel in '92 with a pen in his hand, a black texter, just in case there was fans outside that wanted autographs. That's what it was like. There was a real innocence to celebrities. There wasn't bodyguards. There was no private jets. They weren't going in back doors. They were happy to meet fans and do autographs and pose for photos if anyone had a camera. Not everyone had cameras in those days as well. It was mainly just autographs. But there was almost like an obligation that the celebrity would treat the fan with respect and sign their record and pose for a photo and have a little interaction. The innocence went in the mid-90s. I saw things change. I did see security guards coming on board. And I did see private jets, and people were starting to go through the back door of hotels. And I remember being at a hotel waiting for Justin Bieber, and I'm in my mid to late 30s, and there's 12-year-old kids running around looking at me like I'm some old guy, like just this weird guy wanting to meet Justin Bieber. And I wasn't there because I was a fan. I was there because I wanted my Rich and Famous exhibition to be an exhibition where all generations could go to it and could relate and connect to it in some way. So the grandmother could go with the granddaughter, and the grandmother could say, wow, there's Audrey Hepburn, and the granddaughter could say, wow, there's Taylor Swift. And it became a chore. I hated it at some stages because you have to you've got to think about this. I'd have to go to a hotel and for some time wait days to get a photo because that celebrity that I'm waiting for the exhibition might come out and the security guards push back. I'm not doing it, we're in a rush. The car drives off. Yeah, okay. You wait. They come back at 10 o'clock at night. They get out of the car, they go straight into the hotel, they don't look at you. You go back the next day. Keep in mind, you're not a fan of this person, but you understand that's a good photo for the exhibition. So my mindset changed from being the fan and the excitement and the innocence to, oh, God. But I worked hard on doing it. I continued to do it. At the end of 2013, I'd finished it, and the exhibition has been touring around the world ever since 2008, and it's been in galleries and photo festivals, and it's been incredible. So it was all worth it in the end. I'm proud that I actually did the 25 years because it's very easy to give up on a big project, but you've got to keep your dream alive and you have to persevere. Probably out of my whole collection of roughly 3,000 to 5,000 people, the photo that I look at the most and think, wow, is a picture of me with Sir Donald Bradman. I had the idea I wanted to meet, photograph and interview as many Australian legends as I could. And I thought, who's the biggest Australian legend in 1995 that's still alive? And they weren't younger people, they were people that have actually lived a life. So you kind of, in my mind, you kind of had to be kind of 70 plus. For me, it was Don Bradman. And his address was quite well known because it was printed in cricket books. So when he wrote letters back to people, which he wore daily, he would use his own letterhead paper and it would have his name and address on it. So you could find any cricket book and Don Bradman's address would be on it. 2 Holden Street, Kensington Park, South Australia, 506-8. I still remember it. And in 1995, I got flown over from a photo agency that I was working for at the time in Sydney to Adelaide to take photos of the Grand Prix. It was the last year that Adelaide had the Grand Prix. And I had about 2 days off to be in Adelaide after the Grand Prix finished. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if I went and knocked on Sir Donald Bradman's door. And about a minute later, Don Bradman walks out the door. And I just remember standing there looking at him thinking, oh my God, this is Don Bradman. And he said, oh, what can I do for you? And I said, big fan, Don Bradman, like all Australians are, or most of us. Any chance I could get an autograph? Oh, yes. So yeah, it was surreal sitting with Don Bradman. The only time I've been really starstruck was when I met Michael Jackson. Everything that he did or didn't do was getting documented. Live reports every 30 minutes on the news. It was huge. And for about 2 or 3 days, I was one of those people standing outside hoping to see him when he left the hotel. God knows how I was going to get a photo with him with 300 or 400 other fans. All the fans outside had Michael Jackson t-shirts on, where I was dressed as a business person. And I went upstairs and I looked around and I saw a couple of big bodyguards, big guys, 7 foot tall, huge. And I thought, okay, this is a good sign because they're not just hanging around the lifts for, and the doors for no reason. The lift door opens, Michael Jackson comes out. I thought, I've just got to grab Michael's attention here. So I said, oh, Michael, is it okay if I get an autograph? And he said, oh, yes, come over. And the security guards are like, what just happened? He outsmarted us. These guys are the top of their game at security. And I went under the radar. So I got my record signed, gave the camera to somebody, and I got a photo with Michael Jackson. But while I was standing like in his presence, he was so famous when I was a kid growing up. Michael Jackson, I was starstruck. I was like, wow, that's Michael Jackson. It was almost like standing in front of Elvis or something. It was just like he was larger than life, and there I was standing with Michael Jackson and had my arm around him for a photograph. So I've been lucky enough to have 10 books published, and my first one came out in 2005. It's called Australian Legends, and I spent about 7 or 8 years going around meeting, photographing, and interviewing 80 Australian legends. So I wrote letters to Don Bradman and Joan Sutherland and the last of the World War I diggers. And I got to meet all these people because I realized it doesn't matter who you are, you go to your letterbox and you get a letter. So I took the time to write a letter to somebody. They would always take the time to write a letter back. So I had all these beautiful letters from these iconic Australians. And at the end of it, including Don Bradman when he wrote back to me twice, there's an autograph as well. So you had a handwritten letter and an autograph. So I was writing to all these legends. It took me many years. I was traveling all around Australia, meeting, photographing, interviewing people because I wanted to capture their story, their real story, before they passed away. Because when I was in my early 20s, I remember reading a newspaper and one of these, I think it was Weary Dunlop maybe, the World War II person had passed away. And this was pre-internet. And I thought, once you throw the newspaper in the bin, and I had obviously no idea that the internet was going to come and nobody was ever going to be forgotten in the future. But I thought once you throw the newspaper in the bin, a lot of these legends' lives are forgotten. And as time goes on, they're just forgotten. And I thought I want to do something about it. So I started researching people. I started, going to libraries. There was no internet. And I was researching people that had done incredible things in our history and helped build our nation. And they could be a scientist. I tracked down a guy called Dr. Warren, who in the 50s invented the world's first black box flight recorder. So not everyone's famous that's in my Legends book, but what they did has changed history for the better. So I had this incredible time where I met 80 of them, and my first book came out in 2005, launched at Parliament House. The premiere launched at Bob Carr at the time. I had about 12 legends there. Reg Grundy was there, Smokey Dawson was there, Murray Rose, the swimmer, was there. And I remember I had to get up at the front of Parliament House and do a talk in front of all these legends. And it was a media event. Flashes were going off. TV crews were there. And I had this moment of like, this is something that I would have snuck into years ago. How did I end up in here? And then I came off stage after doing a talk, and there was people there getting my autograph. And I thought, this is turned around. This is quite surreal. So after Australian Legends came out, I wanted to have the photos as an exhibition because there was 80 photos and I'd got them all framed and I just knew. So I contacted the hotel in the city called the Intercontinental Hotel. And finally the manager said, yes, we'd love to have your exhibition. I think it's great. It's good for our guests. So the day that I had to go to the meeting to have an interview with the manager about the exhibition, I'm sitting in the lobby and I'm waiting and the guy's running late. I was told he was running late and I'm sitting there and this guy walks past me and he sits down and he's in all leather boots, leather pants, leather jacket, a leather cane. And I'm like, and I look next to him, he literally sits next to me. It's Alice Cooper. And I'm like, oh my God. So we start talking about golf because I know he's a golfer, We're casually just chatting. And I wasn't going to ask for a photo or anything because, I was there as a photographer trying to pitch my exhibition about Australian legends. And so then I get called up to meet the manager at the restaurant in the hotel. And we're chatting and I'm telling stories about Australian legends and meeting Bradman. spending the day with Joan Sutherland on his 72nd birthday, and Pavarotti was calling. Like, it was incredible. And the guy was like, wow. And he goes, all right, I have one more thing you've got to do for me before I say yes to having this exhibition. Now, through my mind the whole time, I'm thinking he's going to know I'm the guy that's usually outside waiting for his hotel guests, getting photos and autographs. And I thought he was going to say to me, I know who you are. You've been annoying our celebrities for the last 15 odd years. It's not going to happen. And he said to me, I would like to ask for your autograph. Could you sign your book for me? And it was the first time anyone had ever asked for my autograph. And it just happened to be the manager of the hotel, which I used to get kicked out of for many, many years before that, for meeting his hotel celebrity guests. So there was a real strange irony moment of that. That was one of those moments that you don't forget in life. Legends did well. It did really well when all the libraries around Australia and school kids all around Australia got to learn about all of these Australian legends that they'd never heard of, and they started doing projects. The kids were writing me letters, and I'd go visit schools, and I'd be doing talks and helping kids with projects, and it was fantastic. And the publisher said to me, what's your second book? I said, well, I've met about 3,000 or 4,000 celebrities. And they were like, what? And they're like, why don't you tell us this in all your conversations you've had about Australian legends? And I'm like, well, they're two different projects. I want to get Australian legends done. Now I've got a thing called Rich and Famous. So I bring in all these photos on my laptop, and they're just like, oh my God, this is a book. I'm like, yeah, because the stories behind each photo. I can say how I met Michael Jackson. I can say how I met Dalai Lama, you know. And then so, anyway, the second book was Rich and Famous. And then the exhibition came off the back of that book called Rich and Famous. And then I waited a couple of years, and I said to them, I think I've got another book. And they're like, oh, what else could you give us? And I said, I've got a book about Michael Hutchence. And they're like, you knew Michael Hutchence? I'm like, yeah, I did. And I've got like 1,000 photos that have never been published. And they're just like, what else have you got? You need to tell us about all this. How many books? And anyway, so they published a book called Michael in Pictures about my time with Michael Hutchence, this beautiful coffee table book. And I kept working on Australian legends because I just loved meeting these legends and talking to them and getting their story. So I had another book called 100 Australian Legends, where I got another 20 on top of the 80. And then the last book I did with that publishing house was called Richard Simkins Celebrity Quotes, where there was about 30 portraits I'd taken of celebrities with a quote with the photograph. And then I had a little break from books, and I started something called World Letter Writing Day in 2014. And that's the September the 1st every year. And I go around and I talk to kids about writing letters. And I say, take a break from social media. Get off your phones, your tablets, your computers, your games. Just take a break from it all, because these kids now are getting social media anxiety, and there's depression, and there's a whole lot of problems going on. So I get them to write letters. It's like what we did when we were kids. A lot of kids had pen pals, I did, or journals, and I get them to write thank you letters or gratitude letters to people in their lives that they want to say thank you to. So it's usually mum or dad, or both, or a close friend, or grandparents. So that was fantastic, and it's still going. This is the 10th anniversary this year of World Letter Writing Day, and I went to my old school and I founded it there in front of a couple of years, and the media turned up, and there was a big story in the paper. So it's quite a large event every year. And then I've been doing talks for many, many years at mainly schools. And my son said to me a couple of years ago when he was about 8, he said, Dad, you take your Australian Legends book to schools and you tell all the kids about these kind of older legends, but why don't you do books for kids about legends that we can relate to? He's very smart. So I contacted a different publisher in Australia, in Brisbane, and I've had 5 books come out in the last 2 years called Aussie Big Achievers. So I wrote about Kathy Freeman, Steve Irwin, Shane Warne, Ash Barty, and Dylan Alcott. And the books have a positive message. They're about having a dream when you're a child, working hard, believing in yourself, never giving up, persevering, and if you do all of those things, you'll achieve your dream. And so I had those 5 books come out over a 2-year period, and thousands of kids all around Australia have those books. And hopefully, with a bit of luck with my Legends books and the Aussie Big Achievers books, hopefully I'm helping kids to believe in themselves and hopefully one day achieve their own dreams. Because I've been lucky enough to achieve many of my dreams with a lot of hard work and persevering and believing in myself and never giving up.
First concert you ever went to?
Yeah, it was the Legends of Rock and Roll in 1989, and I got to see Jerry Lee Lewis, Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, Leslie Gore, and the Everly Brothers and Cole Joy perform at the Sydney Entertainment Centre.
If you could go and see a band or an artist, past or present, tonight, who would it be?
I think I would probably go and see Queen. I think Freddie Mercury was a fantastic frontman, and I would have liked to experience seeing him as a frontman. I think that would have been an awesome, awesome concert.
Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
Hendrix or Clapton?
Clapton.
Hagar or Lee Roth?
Hagar.
Frida or Agnetha?
Both.
Dance floor or seated?
When I was younger, dance floor. These days, seated.
Fender or Gibson?
Fender.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Beer or something else?
Something else.
MTV or Rage?
MTV.
Vinyl or streaming?
Oh, vinyl. I've never streamed in my life.
Stairway to Heaven or Bohemian Rhapsody?
Stairway to Heaven.
It's 1 a.m, you've seen a band, you've had a few drinks, almost time to head home. What's your kebab order?
A beef kebab with hummus and barbecue sauce, and no doubt it's going to end up all over my shirt.
Where do you see yourself in 5.5 years?
Sitting here doing part 2 of this interview. Hi, I'm Richard Simkin, and you can find my story at the Australian Rock and Roll Museum.